Hello, Robert here, and welcome to my channel. Please go down there at the bottom of this video and click subscribe, and also hit the bell icon so that you'll be notified every time I post a new video. So today we are going to take a look at a major issue with the safety of our building industry, and we are going to take a look into exactly why we have so many buildings collapsing. Although we have been experiencing a period of relative calm recently, we cannot forget the damage collapsing buildings have caused here in this country, and especially in the informal settlements, resulting into really want or loss of life and immense effects on victims and survivors' lives. Sometimes these effects are with the victims for the rest of their lives. Generally, only cases where there are fatalities are usually widely reported in the media, but there are in fact a lot of other cases of buildings collapsing that do not end up being reported, as there are perhaps just a few minor injuries to people that were caused. This does not, however, mean that the collapses have stopped to happen, and in 2013, a few years back, it was estimated that around 6 buildings collapsed every month, and that's a pretty huge number. But why do we continue to have this problem despite all the measures and the knee-jerk reactions as the buildings are demolished along rivers that we see every time a building collapses? To understand why we have more than would be normal number of buildings collapsing during and after construction, it is imperative that we first look at how buildings actually stand. Most high-rise or multi-story buildings in Kenya today, and almost all that we have seen collapsing, are what we call framed structures. This is a common and the most cost-effective way of building, where all the loads meant to be withstood by the building are transferred to the concrete foundations through the suspended slabs that then transfer the weight to the beams, and then the loads to the columns, and finally to the foundations. It's important to note that in this arrangement, the walls are rarely used as load-bearing. This is different, for example, from solid structures, where walls are a major structural element. The sizes of beams, columns, and slabs, called the structural load-bearing elements, and steel reinforcement, are designed by structural engineers. Mostly, the major type of loads considered are dead loads, which include the building's own self-weight and other immovable fixtures, and live loads, which include the occupants of the building and the movable things such as furniture and so on. Other times, loads such as wind loads and tectonic movements or earthquakes may add to the stress of the building and are also considered. With these considerations having taken place, a building designed to this level of detail should be able to withstand normal foreseeable day-to-day forces. However, as we have seen, it's the complete opposite, where buildings end up going down just as quickly as they came up. And that brings me to one major thing that in the course of me looking around, I realized could be a huge problem, either due to greed by developers or simply because most of these structures are illegal and need to be completed as quickly as possible. One reason why we have so many collapses is because the buildings literally went up so fast. Technically speaking, cement, that is a glue that binds together concrete, takes about 35 days to achieve its maximum strength in the right conditions, which are usually moist. However, after 28 days, force work and formwork will start to be removed as the concrete has achieved most of its strength. In many of these collapsing buildings, however, residents report that 10-story buildings have come up in literally 3 months. Of course, this is overstretching the concrete, and one could understand why such a building would come down just as soon as it went up. The concrete isn't even cured yet. Of course, we would go on and on about the quality of work, including mixed ratios, where specific concrete classes require specific mixed ratios of the concrete ingredients. But if the whole thing isn't even cured yet, the whole structure is really bound to come down. A good look at the kind of work done on the structural elements we mentioned, and particularly columns, also reveal that there is another glaring gap in the knowledge of some builders while constructing these very essential structural elements. Columns are point loads, and this must be continuous all through. However, a shocking picture of slanting columns that are not plumb, some even terminating mid-air, and exposed steel reinforcement is a common occurrence. And by all means, this is a recipe for total disaster when these buildings are tested by adverse forces and extreme weather. Contrary to what many would believe, it's not really a problem with people not using enough steel reinforcement. In fact, having very thick steel in concrete columns may work counterproductively, as concrete's compressive strength is also important. I also realized that most of these buildings usually come down at night during rainy season. This can give us an insight into why. First, clearly the live loads are at a maximum at night as all tenants are in there. But this also means that the foundations are subpar and may also have been hastily done, resulting in sinking and settling and eventually collapse. This is usually seen where cotton soil is present or where groundwater is present. And most of these things are determined at the design stage, and one would be tempted to think that perhaps some developers do not use qualified or certified professionals in the first place, maybe fearing the huge costs that most people associate with hiring structural engineers and architects. I have, however, found that the biggest responsibility and really the only authority able to stop the madness in the building industry is government planning authorities. And that is, of course, something that we would look at in another entire whole video, but my observations have led me to believe that officers in the National Construction Authority are just simply overwhelmed by the sheer number of illegal constructions going on. It is commonplace to see buildings marked with the famous X sign to indicate illegality, but still developers manage to go on and complete these illegal structures right under the noses of these officers by simply employing tactics such as erecting very tall hoarding and disguising the building works as something else, or even building at night and holidays. There is a possibility that these officials are also embroiled in corruption by these same developers, but for the big part, it's the ability of these rogue developers to escape the radar of planning authorities with almost every trick imaginable. I would like to think that first, deterrence measures such as crazy bond terms and possibility of many years in jail for rogue developers and colluding officers, as well as enhancing the number of building inspectors substantially, may be able to go a long way in preventing this perennial collapse of buildings we have been experiencing. But that's just me. The buck lies with the men and women in our town halls and high offices. But a little change in the mindset of our developers will also be very helpful along the way. Let me know what your thoughts are regarding this menace of collapsed buildings in the comments below, and let's have a discussion. If you like this video, be sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to receive new content right into your notification. Till next time, see you.